The Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Eels Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And today on the podcast for our Game Day preview with the Parramatta Eels taking on the Canberra Raiders on Sunday down there in the nation's capital, the last game of round 5. I'm joined today by Australian journalist who now lives in New Zealand and has been described by the CEO of the Canberra Raiders as the number one fan of the Canberra Raiders. Welcome to the Paracave Podcast, Mr. Craig Norenbergs.
What an honour. I reckon I've listened to all, 310 episodes of varying colour and rundown that you've done, all different talent and players and supporters and fans like myself. So what a pleasure to be included. I feel honoured to be invited.
Thank you very much. We'll have a little bit of a chat about your support for the Raiders, and maybe down the track we'll do a full length episode.
Yep.
For sure, but
anytime.
Let's start off with, how did you get into rugby league and how did you end up supporting the Raiders?
I was born in Queanbeyan, which is the town just outside of Canberra that's known as Struggle Town. We were an old Queanbeyan family, and we were a Queanbeyan Blues family. We used to go to Seaford Oval before the Raiders had ended. We were Blues. I would stand in the legs of all my the older members of the family who'd drink their probably KB beers back then in those tin, those kind of things. I got lost once at Seaford. Interesting story. My dad was standing there because you could go drive into Seaford and park there, and so the older members of the family would sit in the car, and Dad and my uncles and cousins would get out and drink watching the game.
Yep.
And then one day, Dad heard over the loudspeaker at Seaford, Eddie Norenbergs, can you please come to the front stand there? And Dad thought he'd won a meat tray or something. So he got there and he said, "Oh, your son has been found at a house across the road." Because they're watching the game. I must have been 4 years old and had wandered out into the streets at the back of Seaford Oval. I can still remember it.
Wow.
I hid under a car.
Yeah.
And the son of this older lady in the house came out and they coaxed me out. And when Dad said when he walked in, I was sitting there with this older lady, not saying a word, just sitting in a living room. And so he collected me and went back to the game. Because that's what, back in those days, let the kids go, whatever they want to do.
Okay,
so we used to go to Seaford all the time. We were Blues supporters. And then I was actually a Rabbitohs supporter when I was younger. But then once the Raiders entered, my cousin Wayne Stonham was in the Raiders' original team.
Yeah.
And he'd played at Captain's Flat, where he'd married my cousin Judy, and I was sold on the Raiders. He was my hero. I can remember doing art class at school and making like a Wayne Stonham T-shirt. That was my project for that, because I was just and at school, probably same as you. We played footy all the time, and back then you'd play tackle footy in the Canberra cold where it was icy underneath, and I can't imagine we'd probably go to school and the teacher must have gone, "What the hell are they doing?" Because we were all wet from playing in the Canberra winter, and then played on the weekends. You play for your school, and then you play on the weekend. Then we'd moved to Canberra, so I'd played for the East Canberra Roosters back in the day with my mates, and I was a zippy fullback. And once the Raiders ended, we went to all the games out at Seaford. We'd have to drive out, and they got flogged a lot in the early years, but I was hooked on the Raiders. I would say it's a love affair. Other than my family, I would say the Raiders are the great love of my life.
Yeah, nice. I think actually as a junior, when I played rugby league, 9s to 15s, I think we actually did a trip down to Canberra and played the East Raiders, Roosters, I think, actually.
Roosters.
Yeah, I think,
They
yeah.
were. Yeah, they were.
I think
We
the whole
didn't
club
win that often.
I played for the Penrith Waratahs, so I think the whole club went down there
Ah,
and played.
there you
in
go.
all
I remember.
different,
Yes,
different age
we did the
groups.
same.
Yeah,
I remember going out and out at Penrith Way and playing, being terrified because there must have been something in the water. Our side of town always had smaller players. Every other team we played seemed to be bigger than us. And at fullback, I did a lot of tackling. They would just break through the last line of defence. So, no, they're good days.
yeah,
Good days.
absolutely. Who are some of your favourite Raiders players from over the years?
Oh, back then, I was a huge fan of Angel Marina, who was the original winger, and Steve O'Callaghan, who was the original, other than obviously my cousin Wayne, or Tangles, as he was known. And I've still bumped into old-time Raiders players and mentioned Wayne, and they go, "Oh, Tangles."
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I was Angel Marina's boss when I was head of sport at the ABC, and one of the worst things I've ever had to do is because Alan Tongue became available.
Yeah.
And so and Angel was working as the Raiders sideline or main colour commentator for Canberra games, and I had to ring him up and kind of move him aside to bring Tungy in.
Yeah, wow.
And
That
because
must have been
when I was for my under-14s East Canberra presentation night, Angel Marina gave me the trophy as most improved player, and I thought, oh my God, it's Angel Marina. And then years later, I had to do this terrible thing, which still to this day broke my heart. But sometimes as manager, you've got to do these things. And so, Angel, if you're listening, I'm sorry. It's something I had to do, and I didn't want to do it, and it still broke my tiny under-14's heart.
Yeah, no, that's tough.
But I was also, I was also a big fan of those Parramatta teams from back then.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, who couldn't love Peter Steele? Let's go through that whole Parramatta team. Mick Cronin and Ray Price and Brett Kenny and Peter Sterling and Ella and Groth and Muggleton, and I mean that whole team was unbelievable. Steve Edge, but even going back, further to that, for the years where they came so close, you'd watch it, and I think all rugby league was hoping that the Eels would finally win one, until, of course, Jack Gibson, Ding Dong, the Witch is dead, and they won one. And what a team you guys had! They've got to be congratulated. And it's similar to the Raiders. There's a price to be paid for having that successful era. It's like a breeze blows in and a drought comes in, because what a team. So before that, when we'd play touch footy at lunchtime at school, or even tackle footy, a lot of us I think it was split into either. They were Manly fans or Eels fans before the Raiders came in, and a lot of us would pretend that we were the Parramatta players. So I have a kind of an affiliation with the Eels, because you've still got to admire them. But they were an incredible team, arguably the top three ever.
Okay, no, for sure. Well, Canberra's got an immortal in Mal Meninga. Do you think Parramatta should have an immortal of rugby league?
I know. Well, I'll show you. Look, here, I got it here. Let me pull it out. Look, one of my prized possessions, a bit like you, I've got like a big man cave.
Yeah.
Look, Ray Price and Mick Cronin.
Oh, that's
different, coasters signed.
Yeah.
And I'd met Ray Price at a league do when I was working for Sky News, and then I'd become really good mates with Steve Mortimer.
Okay. Yeah.
When I worked at Sky News, we used to use him as our main league guy, and then one Dally M Awards drinks afterwards, we went up to the bar, and Mick Cronin was standing there. And Steve said, "Craig, have you ever met Mick Cronin?" And I was like, "It's Mick Cronin." It was like having Tom Cruise standing at the bar. And they were both, and I've got to say, Ray and Mick were great blokes, because sometimes if you meet your heroes, it's disappointing, but to meet those guys, so that's got pride of place.
Yeah, no.
In my man cave.
Beautiful, beautiful. What about Parramatta and Canberra games from over the years? What stands out in your memories?
Yeah. I've been to a few of them. Yeah, I was. I can remember, but Seaford Oval used to be packed in the early days, because people used to just turn up to watch the Eels, because they were either premiers or they were thereabouts every year. I was there the year that famously the Raiders beat the Eels. Was it 83?
Oh, it would have been
82, 83. Yeah, it was one of those early ones. And because one of the girls I went to school with had gone to school with Jeff Bugden.
Okay.
And she was very proud of him. Of course, he played for the Eels. And then I remember that game, because you could run on the field back then, and he was the player I targeted to pat on the back as they came off, and the place went wild. And I went to the game in 87 that the Raiders were leading 28-0 or whatever, and the Eels came back and broke my heart hard to win. I was going uni in Sydney then, and they were great years, all those 80 years. And, of course, I've been at so many games at Seaford, at Bruce, and then through the various incarnations of whoever sponsors the stadium through the years that they name it after. So it's always great. It's a really good rivalry, and I think that both sets of fans get on because we understand that you have glory years and there's the price to pay for it. We've just been waiting for so long for it to click into gear, and then we've both made grand finals in recent years and lost them, coming so close. And I went to that one that you should have, could have won against the Knights, and I was like screaming for them to win second half. If there was 5 more minutes, they would have had it. They just got beaten by time.
I've always said
and
that.
then when Brian Smith was coaching here at the Warriors, and I've had a lot to do with the Warriors, a good bunch of blokes, and when Brian was here, we used to nod at each other, and we'd spend a bit of time just having a chat about poor old Brian. He's a really nice bloke, and he comes so close. And even I was reading the book on Wayne Bennett, which is a great book, the Wolf You Feed, fantastic book. And Brian and Wayne talks about Brian Smith in that, about how people forget that because he didn't win a grand final. He won Super League, but he didn't win a grand final. So people kind of go, oh well, he was kind of a failed coach, but no, he wasn't.
No.
Anyone who coaches at that level, and that Parramatta team that year was unbelievable. And I just got back from working in London, and went to that, and I'd been reading about how good Parramatta were, and then going to that grand final. I thought, and you would have thought this for sure. Laydown was there, and they'd lost it. But for Brian Smith to meet that guy, he's such a humble guy now, and he's been through such a lot, and you could tell it hurt him, that I've really got to admire him. And I guess, I'd met Wayne. I'll tell you a funny story about Wayne Bennett. I was working for an organisation here called News Hub, and Wayne Bennett was coaching the Broncos, and he'd had a go at the journalists after a Broncos game. They were insinuating that the Broncos were infighting and they hated each other, and it's teams falling apart. So the news director on the day said, right, I want you to go out and interview Wayne Bennett. They were training at a private rugby school here. So I nervously went out thinking, if he's had a go at the journos there, what's he going to do to me? Because I'm going to be. Yeah. So I got out to this. It was at a school, and I got out there, and there's Wayne's there, and there was a reporter from NRL.com and me, and that was it. Yeah. And so the Broncos were training, and they seemed to be getting on really well. They were laughing and slapping each other on the back, and Alfie Langer was running around telling jokes with them, and Wayne seemed to be getting on with them. So when it came to do the quick interview with Wayne, so the NRL.com reporter was standing here, and I'm standing here, and I said to Wayne, look, I don't know what they're talking about in Brisbane. Yeah. All I've seen here is having a great time. And he looks at me and pauses, and I'm thinking, here we go. And he goes, you are the greatest journalist that I've ever been interviewed by. You are so astute and intelligent. You've nailed it. And we got on like a house on fire after that.
Awesome.
And so afterwards we went away, and I got a photo with him. I got him to sign one of my books. And we had a chat about his time in Canberra, and I found him a delight. Okay, but I'm pretty sure that if I had to interview Wayne Bennett every week, we at some stage have a falling out over something I said. So I don't ever want to see him again, because I have my Wayne Bennett story that he was fantastic to me. Same as Brian Smith. He was so lovely to me, and I've been lucky enough to work with some great play, including Daniel Anderson, of course. Okay. Yep. And I want to start a petition that when the Eels and the Warriors play each other, they should play for Daniel Anderson something. Daniel Anderson medal, or maybe the best player or something, because he coached both. And poor old Daniel, one of the most beautiful men in rugby league, who, of course, had terrible accent a couple of years ago and is struggling, and he just didn't deserve it. One of the best human beings I've ever met. I hope we email each other from time to time. But I hope that both clubs do something for him. So, I've been really lucky to have a lot to do with some of the ex-Parramatta coaches and a guy like Wayne Bennett.
Definitely. That's a great story there. And, that's something that maybe I could pass on to the club and get them thinking about it. Cause
they should do something with him.
I think, round 20-something or 17 or something. So
we used to away. Because I'd got him in at the ABC when I was there. He finished coaching, and he was in between. And his agent had rung me, and I can remember David Morrow suggesting, why don't you get Daniel Anderson in? And I said, okay. So I flew to Brisbane, and I went to the Broncos, and I met with the agent. We did the deal on the back of a coaster. and it wasn't much. It was the ABC. But I remember his agent ringing Daniel there, and we'd had 1,000 wines, and we had a nice chat, and then I'd met Daniel, and from that day on, he was such just a great man. And then so that Daniel, Debbie Splain, and myself used to hang out a lot, and Daniel was fantastic. And then I remember when he got the job at the NRL as the referees coach.
Yeah.
And I remember when he rang me to say, look, he was leaving the ABC to go there. You know, he said, look, I don't want to, but it was obviously a lot more money than the ABC could offer, and so he said, I've got to take the opportunity. But he that was a tough job for him, because he said I think it was the Tuesday, the coaches could ring him and have a go. Can you imagine? Imagine having a Craig Bellamy or a Ricky Stewart or Desi Hasler ring you up on Tuesday and have a go.
Yeah.
But he was so kind of even-tempered, and so I hope both clubs do that something. So God bless you, Daniel Anderson.
That's it. So a couple of games that stand out in my memory. Obviously, when Parramatta weren't doing too well, we ruined your season in 1993 when Ricky Stewart went down and broke his ankle. But you did flog
we would have won that year.
Well, you did flog us that day.
Because Ricky said, because I've asked Ricky about that.
Okay.
Because we went out on straight sets after that, and I think it was the Dragons lost to, and then I got the bus down to Sydney, and we'd lost to the Broncos. And I used to think the same thing. How can that star-studded team lose their half, just one player, and just, well, you could blame Meninga at halfback, and you would have done Bill. But Ricky said, but the problem was he knew all the plays, he knew all the calls, everything ran through him, and he was the linchpin. And they'd been training all year around Ricky. Take out one, just shows just how coaches have to play to a system, stick to the system. Ricky was integral to the system. Take one player out, they were finished. Well, that was the great premiership that they could have, should have won, and all because of one player.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
And so we blame the Eels. And we flogged you that day.
Yeah, you did.
Is it still a record loss?
I think you put 60 points on us, I think.
It was. I think it might have been. It's definitely our biggest win over the Eels, but it might be our biggest win ever.
The other one, I think it is actually. I think you do hold that record. The other one that stands out is the Eels actually posted it today online, the 2020 COVID game at Parramatta Combank Stadium.
Yes.
When Gutho kicked the field goal that night, there was the cardboard cutouts around the field, and there was only about 300, I think, maybe fans at the game. I remember. I think I might have been lucky enough to be at that game, actually.
Yeah. Are you still cranky at Ricky Stewart? A lot of Eels fans.
A lot of Eels fans are. Look. I don't really know what to make of it, to be honest.
You've got to let it go. Let it go, guys.
Yeah,
let it go.
I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, he sacked, 11, 12 players by overhead projector.
He did on the overhead projector. It's either a genius move or not a very nice move. It's either they let them know straight away and they were in no doubt what was happening to them. And I've been the subject of, worked at a few media organisations that have done it that way, just put it up and, my name's in red. Okay, I'm going to the pub. So... Look, maybe Ricky was ahead of his time.
I was excited when it was announced that he was going to go there, because, I mean, obviously he won a premiership at the Roosters and had some pretty reasonable success at the Sharks. I was excited when he turned up. And
I thought he'd do well too. Yeah. I'm excited that he went to the Raiders. And I want to put it to them that when the Raiders win a premiership, I want the very last question at the press conference, because I won't get the first one because I think Fox always gets the first one. I want the last question, and I'm going to put it to Ricky that if we win the premiership, shouldn't we have a statue for you at Bruce or whatever the new stadium will be? Because there's a Mal Meninga one and there's a Laurie Daly one. I think if we win the premiership, because arguably then Ricky will be the greatest Raider. He's won premierships and then to coach a premiership. He'd need a statue. He
started in 1988 at the Raiders as a player?
Yeah, coming from rugby,
And then he's done, over 10 years as head coach of the Raiders? Right?
So he's part of the woodwork there, and he's got that job. Because I get that all the time on Twitter. People, whenever I defend him, and because I love him, and we're both Queanbeyan boys, and our families know each other. So I think, and having had drinks with Ricky and dinner with Ricky, he's a fantastic bloke. And I try and defend him on Twitter, and I get held down by people just, but what about, like, whenever we lose a match, they straight away say, I can't wait for Ricky's press conference. Well, of course, he's the coach. He's not happy that they've lost. So what do you expect? Brad Arthur would be the same. Look at Wayne Bennett or Craig Bellamy.
Yeah, well, Parramatta fans are actually probably a little bit disappointed that Brad hasn't gone down the Ricky path sometimes and
blown up.
Yeah. About a
different
loss.
style.
Well,
different style of play.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Ricky might have cost Canberra 50,000.
Yes, yeah. He doesn't do it as much anymore.
No,
he didn't do it. He didn't do it last week against the Sharks, which was just such a humbling loss that even I was expecting a blow up. But he was kind of seething. And then I've got my godson, my godmother's son works in the Raiders in a sanctum, and he messaged me and just said, "Rick, not happy." So I just thought, oh. But then you think these days, so back in the days of the classic Raiders or Eels team, if the team had a terrible loss, they'd flog them. They put them on a road run from Carlingford to Parramatta, or from Parramatta to the city, or they'd send them from Seaford into the Civic in Canberra, and in the heat, or they'd make them do extra laps, or they do something. What do they do? The kids now, the young players, they take away their Netflix off them. They take off their coffee card. No more coffee club for you. How do you punish?
Difficult one.
I don't know the answer. Next time I see, I'll have to ask him.
Yeah. Take away their social media, maybe for
that maybe no Instagram for you this week.
yeah, that's it. I mean, that's been a thing that Parramatta fans have thought maybe some of the players should stay off social media for a while just to concentrate on their football. But
yes, the other thing I love doing is in the lead up to games is checking out what the opposition fans are saying on the fan sites.
Okay,
the chat sites and stuff.
Yeah.
Love it. And I'll normally keep two. I'll have like my iPad with the Raiders greenhouse there, and then I'll follow like this week, whatever the Eels are. I haven't looked them up yet, whatever, and just have them on my phone just to say, well, what are they saying about us this week? Because last week was hilarious. The Sharks fans are just destroying their team early on, and the Raiders fans are like, oh, how good's this? And then they switch. It's hilarious
So
to watch.
Is that on game day? Or
that's on game day, yeah. And in the lead up, I listen to all the podcasts, and actually, I'll give a plug. I'll take this beanie off and put on my Ask Clown beanie from Blake and the Porks podcast.
Okay,
there we go. And then there's two big Raiders podcasts that I listen to. Probably like you, I'll put it on in the car and drive into work. Depending if I'm doing breakfast, because I normally do breakfast radio news, and it's early hours, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
It's the thing that keeps me company is listening to rugby league podcasts like yourself, and yours I just load in. Yours is the one that I do when I'm doing the washing up.
Okay, yeah.
After dinner,
yeah.
Because I'll just put it on and put in the headphones, and I can just zoom off and do it that way.
Yeah, nice. Well, I just try to think. The Raiders have got a pretty good record down at Bruce Stadium. Or what's it called these days? GIO Stadium these days.
GIO, yeah. I think it's like you've only won just over 30% of games there.
Yeah, I think
it's something like that.
We may have won in 2022.
Yeah.
But before that, there was like 8 or 9 games that we hadn't won down there, and it's a very hard place to go to. And get
it's funny because and you'd go through this as well. Supporters, we believe in pixies at the bottom of the garden, and that whatever sock we put on that morning is going to affect how our footy team. Everybody goes through it, and it's the same. Looking at stats, there's two ways of looking at it that stats count. That Parramatta don't do well at that stadium, or are they overdue for a loss? It's a bit like a roulette wheel. You're putting a black or red. The tosses that's become before, it doesn't matter. It's just that toss. So this weekend, does previous years count? What does the form of 10 years ago have to do with the game on Sunday night? But we kind of think in our little human brains that somehow plays, and that's why I'll dress like this on game day, as though what I wear has anything to do with the way the Raiders are going. You do the same.
Well, I suppose I do have a little bit of a superstition. I do like to wear the jersey that they play in on that day.
There you go. Does it count? Like,
I don't know if it makes a difference or not.
Yeah, because I'm wearing my lucky stuff, and I don't think it's either you're going to win or I'm going to win. For one of us, it's not going to work.
Well, maybe it does work, because last weekend I didn't wear the retro jersey. I wore the home jersey and we lost. So maybe it does count.
Oh, you lost badly. You must have been throwing the pillow around the room. I did that. My wife has a go at me. Don't throw the pillow.
Well, it's only a pillow, not a TV or anything like that, is
That's
it?
right. Yeah, it's a brick, yeah.
But yeah, no, I've made the trek down to Canberra a few times. I'm not going down this year. I'll be watching it in the cave here, and
Yep.
it's certainly a good road trip. It's a long road trip on the way home if you lose, but
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it is about going down there for Parramatta. I think the Dragons have got a pretty bad record down there too, I think.
Yeah, there's some teams that we have the wood on, then there's other teams. Like strangely, we have the wood on the Storm. Well, we do all right against the Storm. But, like watching the game on Thursday night, how good were the Storm and the Broncos? And I don't know your thoughts on the Eels, but I watched that and thought, I don't know if the Raiders can live with those two. Like, and round 5, their quality was so outstanding already. It was like a semi-final game.
It was.
I thought they're head and shoulder. And then you look how well the Panthers are going. Maybe the Eels and the Raiders, it's another year. They're doing all right. There's some good kids coming through, and I look forward to seeing Ethan Sanders play for the Raiders next year. But maybe both teams are 1 or 2 years away, because Thursday night they played on a different level.
Oh, it was. It was going. The score was going up and down. Each team was winning, losing, and I thought
it was
the Broncos
back to end to end.
Yeah, I thought the Broncos were going to have it, but then the Storm came back in the end, and the Broncos even had 2 of their best players out. The Storm,
halfback injured,
Storm. They had Cameron Munster come back, so that was a big bonus for them. So,
wow, how lucky are they?
Cracker of a game. So, I mean, our 2 teams this year have started off reasonably well. I mean, you guys started off 2 wins in a row,
and fell away. We could have been. Well, the Warriors game, I actually saw enough there to think, oh yeah, they're going to fight right to the end, which is what you want a team that's going to be in it till the 80th minute. So, and they were kind of there. It was just fell away at the end. But it was kind of a war of attrition, and probably the Warriors wanted it more because they should have won their first couple of games, but then they got it. But then the game against the Sharks, it's either that every team's allowed one of those where they slip up and they're just terrible, and I'm sure Penrith's got at least one. You guys, last year, bang, like you got the wood against the Panthers. Maybe it was the Sharks were that bad, but then you look at last week, and you would have gone. So both teams are going into this match with reasons that both sets of fans would think, well, they've got something to prove. The Eels came so close, they'd want to go one better and get the 2 points against the Raiders. But the Raiders were so bad, Ricky's picked virtually the same team to give them another chance.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting this game to go right down to the wire. So I actually can't pick it. I can't pick who's going to win.
Yeah, I think Brad Arthur has made the same sort of team as well from last week. I'm just trying to think. I think Bailey Simonson is back in playing against his old club.
Yeah, and he always plays well against the Raiders too, so he's a bit of a bogey player for us. And but he just, look, I think he was a great player, and I think most Raiders supporters when he went to the Eels said good luck to him, and he's been good, and you just know he's going to go play well against us. It always happens that way.
Yeah, it's always old players from old clubs.
And you could have had Josh Papali'i years ago. But he signed with the Eels.
I really don't know what happened there, but
he probably would have fitted in there. I'm glad that he stayed the rate because he's been an incredible player. But he would have definitely fitted in with the Eels, and I don't know what.
I think that was about the time that Ricky was there, was it, or was it later than that?
Yeah, I think it was later than that.
Ricky went back to the Raiders, I think, and
I think he would have fitted in.
Yeah,
but Junior Paulo, of course, former Raider, he did really well there. So there's enough in that game. A little bit of spice, for the Eels and the Raiders.
Well, Matt Timoko, he'll be on fire, I think, maybe this week, as we see.
Yeah, he's just re-signed.
And players who have re-signed with their clubs, then...
Ethan Strange, he's signed this week as well. Some good young kids coming through. But, you look at I think both sets of forwards kind of nullify each other this week, so it'll be depending on which backline fires. Like Gutho's been good but not amazing this year. And you've got Rapana at the back for us, who's a player that just plays on he's kind of a confidence player that if he starts well and he can feed off the more that the crowd gets into him either in Canberra or is against him elsewhere, he can get into it. So that's one of the great battles I'm looking forward to seeing him playing because you've got to respect Gutho's amazing.
Parafeds aren't liking Jordan Rapana.
Yeah, it's because when they do this to the crowd, come on.
He's had a few battles against Parramatta that Parramatta fans certainly don't like him for. I think there was one a couple of years ago with the hip into the head. in a.
Oh, he loves that stuff. Yeah.
I think that.
And then how Dylan Brown goes at halfback is going to go a long way to deciding the game, because Fogarty's like, because normally Parramatta can just kick their way out of trouble.
Yeah.
But now we've got Fogarty this weekend, who you'd imagine. But I'd imagine if the Eels are just making yards downfield, you won't need big booming halfback kicking it. So that's why the forwards are going to be just so important this weekend. I don't think it's going to be a really open game. I think it's going to be one of those real knock 'em down battles. Real low scoring. It'll be like 10-6 or something like that, too. And I don't know which way.
I hope not. I hope it's a bit more entertaining than that. But I mean,
there's nothing.
Rugby league purists like a low score if it's a good contest.
Yeah, which was interesting because the Warriors coach Webster said that on the weekend that you got to love a game like that because it was kind of really, really tight and gritty. Raiders are overdue for a big win. That's what I thought they'd have against the Sharks because it's just always so horrible that it's always going down to the end that you're just screaming at the television. I'd like to see a couple of games where they do what sometimes the Panthers will do and occasionally the Roosters will do and just blow a team out of the water. I'm hoping it's this week because it just gets too tense. My wife hates it. Whenever the season starts, she says, "Oh, here we go again." And I know because I'm looking, and you do the same, and every Parramatta and Raiders fan will do this. You're looking at what round's coming up. Okay, Sunday night, I've got to make sure I'm doing nothing in my life. So it doesn't matter if there's a wedding on. I'm like, geez, do I actually say I can't go to that wedding?
Yeah, who?
Because you'll be running out to the car all the time. Season? Yeah, that's right. But some people do it. Like they forget.
Yeah, that's why my wedding was in October, and it was 21st of October. So
that's it. You got to do it after the grand final, just in case.
But also too, the vines look better in the Hunter Valley as well at that time. So
beautiful. Of course. See there. That's it. Yeah, there's two reasons for it. There
was an excuse. Who do you think in the Parramatta side that Canberra's got to watch out for, keep an eye on?
Well, as I said, Bailey Simons is going to be the guy. But in the forwards, look, Campbell Gillard's fantastic. Now Junior Polo, of course, because it used to be that Polo and Josh Papali would kind of nullify each other. Okay. Papa's not as kind of dominant as he used to be. Yeah. Paulo's still. He's just that keg of a player that's hard to put down. And if they can get their hands free, it'll be the offload. So if you've got a Gutho or like a Russell or a Talangi who's just hanging around, they can pick up those and make yards. And the Raiders are finding difficulty when we're attacking the line. We just can't finish it off. And then last week they were dropping the ball in 5 metres from the line. Yep. Parramatta's not bad at when they get down the other end, if they can get down the other end. So it'll be depending on how both teams start. And, I think you've got to watch out for Simonson. Anytime a player that used to play for a team plays against, same as Paulo, that you've got to be careful for them. So, in the same way as like a lot of those Raiders players are now overdue for a big one. So you don't know who's going to pop their head up. And, I'd love to see like Xavier Savage is a young bloke who's really come through this year. Last year he was back playing New South Wales Cup and everyone thought, well, geez, Ricky's lost faith with him. But he's really muscled up and he's come back. He was good last week. I'm hoping he'll cut through this week.
Yeah, he is an exciting player that you can score tries. Have you got a thought about a first try scorer at all?
Oh, I'm not really a betting man because I always say to my son,
I just try and pick him.
Rugby league is proof why you shouldn't bet on sport because you just can't. You think you got to lay down and that it's not going to happen. So put your money on Xavier Savage's first try scorer or Bailey Simonson to score the first and the last try. Because if it comes down the wire, he's going to score the winner. I've said it here first.
Okay, well there you go. Look, I'm going to go probably. I'll go Will Penasini. I like Will. He's bulked up this year and
good centre.
He's been one of our better players throughout the year. So I'll go Will. You said maybe a 10-6 sort of a game. Do you think that will be the case, or do you think there'll be more points in it?
No, I think it's going to be a tight one. I haven't checked the weather in Canberra. Like, I'll have to ring my mum and dad and say, how's it been recently? Because it's better if it's cold for us, and it's that time of the year where it starts to get a little bit colder out of Bruce. Yeah. I used to live, when I grew up, we lived in Lynham, which was in walking distance from Bruce. So one of the great memories was walking every second weekend with Dad to games, and we always went together to Seaford. But then, it was great bonding with your dad, talking footy. Dad would smoke 3 packets of, Winfield Blue, and he'd always be sending me to get beers. And then on the way home, he'd always say, "Don't tell your mum. Don't tell your mum." Tell her I had light beers. Smoking those ciggies, and God, what a great era to grow up in and watch footy in. Fantastic. Which is why I've got this one under here. So I got
the old Hardy's jersey. Look out! Yeah.
That's a great era, and they're the best jerseys. The old cotton.
Yeah, they are, and the ones with the stripes. That's what Parramatta's known for, stripes.
That was the stripe like an eel.
Yeah, that was it. 100%. Well, I think it could be probably about like I can't remember. I was on another podcast talking Para the other week, the other day, and I did a score prediction. I can't remember what it was, but I think it might have been about something like 22-16 or something like that. I'll have to go back.
Okay, a few tries in it.
It'll be a close game, and I think maybe a few points in it. I'm just hoping that Dylan runs the team, and look, Gutho is there, and I think last week he tried too much and too hard and didn't have confidence in the halves to do their job. So I hope Dylan can run this team, and Blaze just feed off it. And
Well, it depends how Blaze and Dylan goes in the halves, and how Lussick goes out of dummy half, and like that'll go a long way. And it's the same for the Raiders, that how Levi goes, and how the Raiders spine that, whether Rapana can get injured early. He's probably overdue for a game where he has a couple of blow ups and drops some high ball, or
hope so.
Has a go at some other players. And but I'm liking the look of the Raiders backs at the moment. We might have the edge over your guys. The forwards will nullify each other.
Another player that Parramatta might be able to niggle is Corey Horsburgh as well.
Corey's horse. He wasn't great last week coming back in his first game back this year. I mean, he looked a touch undone. He probably needed a trot in New South Wales Cup a bit more, but he was forced him through injuries to come in. And he would have been dirtied himself. And I thought Joey Tarpany was fantastic in a beaten team. Papa was okay. And Hudson Young wasn't up to his usual best. He hasn't started the season that well, so I'm hoping that some of those forwards are overdue for big performances, because they were just dropping the ball cold. Both teams were, Cronulla and the Raiders. Yeah. But in the second half, Cronulla and this says something about, like there is something to be said to just hanging on to the ball and completing your sets. And if you do that, you're almost there. But then it's that panic on the fifth or sixth. That and as the game goes on, the forwards get tired and they just drop the ball, and it's unforgivable to play the ball if they just concentrate, grab the ball, the guy in front of you is playing it, pick it up, and just give it to whoever's standing there. Yeah. If it's the 7 or the 9, just think about it. Particularly if you're attacking the line and you're getting a repeat set. Hang on to the ball. Every fan goes through this. There's nothing worse than you get a penalty or a repeat set, or the other team drops the ball and you're on the attack. Oh, they've dropped it. and that's what happened last week for the Raiders. So hopefully they got rid of all their drop ball for a season, so they'll complete all their sets this week.
Well, it's 8th versus 9th. The Raiders in 8th and Para in 9th. So whoever wins this game will jump.
Yeah, one goes up, one goes down.
Yes, that's it. The Eels in the famous Tigers spot of 9th. Whoever, it should be a good game. Always is. And look, I'll be honest with you. I think I've tipped Canberra this week in the tipping competitions. Wow. So that could be a little bit of reverse psychology. I don't mind not getting a perfect round if Parramatta do end up winning, because then they win the game.
Yes, I do that too.
Yeah. I mean, the head says Canberra, but the heart says Parramatta. So, look, it's just going to be tough. I mean, hopefully Parramatta can prove me wrong and I miss out on the tip.
I hope so. And I've got to say, the only other man cave that I've seen close to yours is the Mad Butcher here in Auckland. I've been to his house, Wahiki Island. I bumped into Mad Butcher. I never met him, and then I just after COVID, we both went to go to our favourite cafe, and it had closed. So I was standing at the cafe going, and I turned, and this guy pulled up in a car and I open. He's got this rusky voice, the Mad Butcher. For those who don't know, he's the number one supporter of the Warriors and successful chain of butcher stores. And so I said, I'm Butcher, I'm Craig, I'm Mad Raiders supporter, and he swore at me, Raiders. And I said, all right. And so he drove off, and then we went to Wahiki Island, which is a little island just off the coast of Auckland. And it's great for a weekend getaway. You can, book a place there. And so there's a they have a market on Saturday mornings, and we went there, we're looking around, and the butcher was there. And so I went back home and said, Butcher, I'm Craig, we met, and he goes, oh, great. He goes, come round to my house. Yeah. And so I jump in his car, we go to his house, and I was virtually captive. The butcher had kidnapped me and wouldn't let me go because we was just talking footy, and we go to his house, and it looks like your place, but it's Warriors and Kiwis, kid. Yeah, wow. And it was brilliant. Yeah. And then we drove around the island, and he'd stop and talk to me because he's a celebrity. Yeah, just talking Warriors and rugby league, and then he's the only other man cave that I have seen that comes close to yours. Look at that! Yeah. What a thing of beauty! It is
if you like blue and gold, that's for sure. But
it's so good.
Look, there's Dave's Eagle Nest as well, Manly supporter. He's got a good one. I think it's on Facebook. I don't know if it's on Instagram or anything, but I know it's on Facebook. So Dave's Eagles Nest. So check that one out for Manly supporters. And if you like the man caves, check them out. I'm just trying to think of any others as well, but his one springs to mind. So
I've got a pretty good one, but it's more of, every time I've met a sports person, I get him to sign stuff like here we go. Here's my favourite one. It's this rugby league week when Meninga signed for the Raiders, signed by Mal, and we used to play when I worked for Capital Television in Canberra when I was a young bloke, which is now Channel 10 Canberra. We used to play touch footy against the Raiders on a Tuesday. Okay. So Mal used to turn up every week, so I'd mark him, and Tim, when Tim Sheens was coaching, and the support staff would come along, and in the lead up to the 94 grand final, they used that for Paul Osborne's getting some conditioning in that game. Okay. And no one leaked it. Like we're a media organisation, and no one leaked it that he was the surprise kind of. Wow. And I still say to Aussie that, you remember that game? We used the conditioning and that kind of thing. But, boy, how lucky was I to play against that golden era of the Raiders. Aside from that, we used to see them at nightclubs. Yeah. I used to sometimes see the players at a nightclub on a Saturday night, and they were playing on the Sunday. Different era. And they'd be smashed, and I'd think, how are they going to back up, particularly the forwards? And they'd be coming out the next day and throwing themselves, belting the ball up.
One of my early memories is it must have been 1990 or 91. Sorry. Must have been 1990 or... Anyway, so the years that Canberra won the premiership, and the old Winfield Cup trophy was at the Leagues Club. Yeah, it must have been 1990 because the trophy was still broken, I think, in the cabinet. In the cabinet. So
it would have been 1990.
I remember going to the Leagues Club there
after the 89.
Yeah, and I think it was supposed to be on a circular cabinet, but it was broken. The trophy was broken, so it.
And that was
didn't.
It's a great Leagues Club. I haven't been to the Leagues Club at Parramatta I used to go to the Chinese restaurant there with Daniel Anderson, and we'd catch up. It's a great Leagues Club there. It's one of the great world Leagues clubs, the Parramatta Leagueies. Yeah,
Parramatta Leagues Club, proud sponsors of the Para Cave podcast. Jack's Pale Ale available at Parramatta Leagues Club.
Yeah, nice drop.
Yes, it is. It is very nice. Well, Craig Norenbergs, thank you very much for joining me today. And as I said, we'll go in depth
pleasure.
with a future episode as part of the Fans and Members series, and we'll no doubt get some more great stories. And
good luck this weekend.
Yes, no doubt we'll be both messaging each other on Sunday night.
Yeah, as long as it's not a controversial refereeing decision,
obstruction call or something.
Yeah,
like
one of that'll do me.
Yeah.
That'll do me.
That's it. Well, enjoy the game, and as I said, we'll catch up again soon. And if I'm ever in New Zealand,
love it.
If I'm ever in New Zealand, I'll message you.
Come and stay.
Catch up.
Come and stay.
Yeah,
you can meet the butcher.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to get some of those names that you mentioned on the podcast. They'd be
Yeah,
great.
get 'em on.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
for sure. But look, I'm going to end it by saying go Para, and I'm sure you'll end it by saying
Go Raiders.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Parramatta Podcast. See you next time.